We're 5 for 5 on elected TST members. Welcome, everybody. I think we should go ahead and get going just because people kept telling me to add proposed topics for this meeting, and the list is, I don't know if we'll be able to get through it all. I've lifted, if anybody, I'm planning to go through them in the order given in the draft topics list. We might not get to the software license discussion. That is not time urgent, I don't think. It's something I definitely want to discuss, but if it doesn't get discussed today, we'll do it next month or maybe some private one-on-one conversations until then. But let's go through them in the order we have here. Let me share my screen. All right. If you are attending and I didn't get you on the other attendees list, please feel free to edit this, or if maybe Michelle or Denise might be able to do attendance quickly, but I got most people. Sorry. There is a P4.org blog, and Denise Barton is very good at reminding me about things that I need to write, which I still have one or two on the list for 2024. But for 2025, we'd like to start maybe like rotating, say, every 3 months, having the co-chairs of the working groups writing a blog article for updates in the past year or so for that working group. We do it every 3 months or so. Every working group will get about one turn a year. So among the, I haven't yet pinged the working group co-chairs, but if there's any volunteers among the working group co-chairs who'd like to go first sometime in the next 3 months, definitely let Denise know and me know. Otherwise, I'll probably volunteer the architecture. I shouldn't even say this because then it'll automatically happen this way. But if anything, I'd actually like to. I know everybody wants to go last in this, but the architecture working group is kind of going through kind of a hopefully a rejuvenation phase, and so it might be a little while before we have much new to say. So I'd actually like to beg that it can go third, or at least second. If anybody here from runtime or language is interested, like again, this is not immediately, but sometime in the next 3 months would be by March. Sorry, next 2 months. By the end of March would be nice. Please contact Denise and me just to let us know that you're interested in working on this. It doesn't have to be long, and the goal is, I think, any highlights of recent accomplishments, but also I think definitely a focus on areas of current focus and plans for the near future are definitely welcome there. Okay. Any comments on that? Otherwise, we'll go on to, I'll ask Billy if he can update us on the Google Summer of Code for 2025.
Yes, so the main thing is next Tuesday, by next Tuesday, we have to submit our org application, which mostly involves putting together a project ideas list. And we are currently in process of that. We already have 3 projects on the list, and there are 2 pending ones that David is drafting that are from the education group, I guess. David might give us some more updates on that.
Yeah, correct. These 2 projects are more oriented on research, and they are proposed by Muhammad Shabatz. I hope that I spell his name properly. So the mentors should be should coming from his group of PhDs, but let's say the latest update that we get from him is that he's going to let's say write it down the proposal during this weekend. What I pushed in the GitHub repo is kind of a placeholder that I have shared previously with Billy and Fabian. So I don't know much more about I mean, I don't have any further information about them. That's it.
And Billy, after our application is submitted, what's the date again for us hearing whether we've been accepted as an organization?
I think the day is 27th. I need to double check.
Of
Yeah,
February.
and also Jonathan has also offered to provide 1 or 2 project ideas, I think. Yeah, and
The notification was the end of February, Billy, for acceptance?
yes, let me double check. That's what I remember.
Okay.
Yep.
So do you know how many projects they usually expect in terms of ideas? We currently have 4 already committed, and then plus 2 tentative ones, which is quite a lot.
Yes,
Yeah.
I have read the official guide, which I think what they tend to suggest is that we have at least 4 project ideas, and so at least more than that. And they suggest putting up maybe around 8 to 10, so the
Mhm.
contributors can choose. But eventually, what we get will be less than that.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. And so we have this. There's also this collaborative project, right, with NS3, we're currently looking into.
Yes, there is one under discussion in
Yeah.
email thread.
So if we commit this, we would also write this down in this idea list, or would this be an NS3 project? I guess we need to sort that out, but
Yes, we need to further discuss that. Yeah.
yeah.
All right. Thanks for the update. If anybody has any project ideas or wants to volunteer to be a mentor, please contact Billy. And hopefully our organization's application will be accepted and we'll have another round of projects going on this summer. Looking forward to that if that does happen. Let's see. Next, any other comments on the Google Summer of Code? We can always circle back to it if you remember a question later. There's so the 25 the P4 workshop for later this year is definitely on the agenda next after this. There's another event that Michelle has collected a set of networking related events coming up this year on the calendar that we're at least thinking about. And one that's coming up very soon is April 2025 in London called KubeCon. And I guess one kind of high level question is going to float out there. P4.org has limited resources. The P4 workshop tends to be our main focus, but we're trying to branch out and see if there's others that make sense to have a presence at. And a presence at another event could just be, I guess I should say, if anybody in the P4 community that you personally or you know of goes to another conference or workshop and gives a P4 related presentation, please feel free to contact Michelle, Denise, or myself for possible a blog idea, article idea, or some other mention of it on the website for publicity purposes. But you don't, that's not a requirement, but it's just nice to have. And so, for example, one presence at some of these other events like KubeCon could be as little as, rather than having a mini workshop for P4, it could be a birds of a feather session. If the conference has things like that, if people are already there and want to meet together while they're there in person, or submitting a talk if anybody's interested in or already planning. Is anybody already planning attending KubeCon in London in April 2025 that you were aware of? Would be one first question. Please let us know. And if you are, would you be interested in some kind of a birds of a feather session or other get together? All right, that seems like nobody here.
Oh, sorry, Andy. I was shaking my head. No.
Okay. Thanks, Christina. Yeah, so I wasn't already planning on going for other reasons anyway. I suppose I could reach out an email a couple people I know at Intel to see if they're interested. I know the IP they might be that might be something they're tracking, but I'm not aware of anybody that's going. Okay, so Birds of a Feather might be a pretty small group unless we find a collection of a few people that are already interested in planning on going. I guess with that, we can move on to the P4 workshop, the big event for the year. Last year we had it later than usual because of Linux Foundation transition delays and other organizational delays. One possibility now that we remember the Linux Foundation, I guess maybe not, maybe this is unrelated to the Linux Foundation, but one of the events that we're considering, our preference is to keep it in the San Jose area. And one big event that we could attach ourselves to is the OCP Global Summit held October 14th through 16th in San Jose. They have it at a convention center, a San Jose Convention Center, I believe there, or a adjoining hotel. They have options for a full day workshop, which we could hold on what they call day 0, which would be October 13th, the day before the main OCP talks and events. So there's, I believe, Michelle or Denise had probably found out this information about costs and what's provided for those costs here. And I think the only things that are not represented, so it looks like it includes food and registration and all the other stuff. The main things it wouldn't include that I'm aware of are, if we wanted to make P4 t-shirts and give them away, that would be an extra cost for p4.org. The one thing I guess I highlighted myself there just because I was wondering, in order to have a October 13th full day P4 workshop at this, all attendees would be required to register for the OCP event as a whole. There's no, as far as I know, there's no way to say, I just want to go to the P4 workshop for that one day and I don't care about the rest of OCP. You have to sign up for that and then you get to go to any of the day 0 events, is my understanding. Does that sound, as your understanding as well, Michelle and
That's
Denise?
correct. Yeah.
Okay. So if that's true, the sign up prices, and I think these are maybe from last year. I don't know if these are known prices for this fall, but maybe last year the prices were early bird sign up was $700, registration was $700 for one person, and standard was $900. And if you wait till the last minute and do it on site, it's more, of course. I think a lot of people that go from industry often have their company reimburse them for these kinds of things. I don't know if that's common for university attendees to have research funds, travel expenses cover things like this. Nate, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I'm a big proponent of co-locating with OCP. I think that would be strategic, and it's a really, it's a good community for us to get closer to. So I see a lot of benefits. The cost is a lot higher than what we charged in the past. I was going to ask you and maybe Denise and Michelle or others, like, are there ways we could get creative to at least provide some path for, for reduced costs for people based on need? That could be independent people who don't have a company or university to pay their entry fee, or, there's in the academic setting, there's certainly well-funded groups for whom this is not cheap, but not a big deal. And then there's a lot of groups that don't have a lot of funding, and of course, the new U.S. administration is there's a lot of uncertainty about science funding. So even folks that are well-funded are generally being conservative right now until they understand kind of what it's going to look like. So if, for example, if we were to get sponsors from some companies for the conference, is there a way that we could, basically offer some reduced tickets by using those sponsor funds to defray the costs, kind of scholarships?
Or
Yeah,
maybe
just
these
curious to hear what's
complimentary-
possible.
One thing to
maybe
note
these
that I don't,
complimentary passes that are listed just below. Sorry, that's maybe what you were about to say, Michelle.
yeah, so those are for speakers. So I think, again, we would have to kind of prioritize and encourage folks who can get it covered by company funds to do that, and kind of try to keep those 25 comp passes. And you know, I don't think we're gonna have 5 staff show up, so some of those could also be given out. You know, for the folks who definitely need it. The P4 board did approve kind of a reimbursement policy for some, you know, but it isn't on an, you know, case by case basis for trying to support folks who don't have funding otherwise and wouldn't be able to attend. So again, it's kind of case by case. So this is a really good option. The trade-off is, you know, it is quite a bit more expensive. A full day, I think Denise found out from OCP, is going to cost the foundation $70,000. So we would obviously want to try to solicit some sponsorship to help defray some of those costs. We do have 50K earmarked in the budget already to, you know, go towards the P4 workshop. So we'd have to get, you know, this is essentially comes down to this group should make a recommendation to the governing board, but the governing board has the final say in what financial commitment is made for this event. So this particular offer allows, it's a lot less of a heavy lift to do it like this with OCP because they'll handle registration. I believe they also handle the CFP, at least like we'll use their platform and you'll get access to approve and review everything. They handle all the on-site logistics. So it like makes the actual logistics of the event much easier and straightforward. I don't believe you would even have to get LF events involved at all. So that's, you know, easier than trying to do it ourselves. The downside is it's a little bit more expensive on the cost side, and it might price out some folks who would normally attend. The upside is you might be able to draw in some folks who wouldn't go to the workshop otherwise, but are there because of OCP, and you're kind of branching out into a little bit new audience. And there might be additional opportunities to do P4 related talks within the wider conference and kind of continue to build P4's public image and knowledge. So it's really up to this group to decide, but you know, as Nate said, this is a pretty solid opportunity. It's just whether we think the overall cost versus ease of logistics makes sense, and the overall price point for folks to attend versus, you know, broader audience makes sense.
Michelle and Denise, do you know? So if we did the full day and we got 5 staff passes and 25 speaker passes, is it up to us how those 30 passes get used, whether they're speakers or not? Does that matter to the?
Yeah, I believe we just get we get the code and then we can hand out the code to people
Okay.
as needed. That's typically how it's worked in the past.
So without that would be a number of sort of free passes the P4.org would be able to get out without requiring any additional funding from P4.org.
Yeah, and you know, we might be able to go back and negotiate that a little bit. And
last year we had, I think, about 12 or 13 speakers in our single track full day event, just as a level setting, like half of those speakers is the number we had last year, roughly.
Right. Yeah, I'd have to look at the agenda. And I think some speakers still paid as well because they had the funding to do so. So, you know, and it supported the event.
So I would suggest, I mean, just to kind of get the read of this group, which would be very valuable, like two things on the table. Like the mechanics of how we pay for it, and you know that there might be some discounts and stuff. That can be worked out maybe later, but would be curious, like, do people agree with my cheery, you know, this would be really great to be next to OCP, or if people are like, meh, that would be useful to know. And then number 2, yeah, like, is this, you know, 700 early registration, is that like so out of what's reasonable that you or, you know of people for whom that'd be an obstacle, and we should go back to something more grassroots, you know, at a university or at a company, where it's probably more like, I don't know, what were we last year, 250 or something, or 300? I think roughly half. I don't know, a little less than half. Would be curious to hear people's thoughts on those 2 points.
I think this is good. I think the number of free passes we get could help out students definitely, or others with difficulties. I don't think for me the registration cost, it'd be nice for us to publish, you know, when early registration is over and the cost is going up for everybody, just to remind us. But other than that, I just wanted to call out the cost, as you say, to ask other people's feedback too. That sounds
Well, I
good.
think last year it was 150 for the early bird, wasn't it?
We dropped it quite a bit. So in past years, it's been anywhere from like $200 to $400, depending on the venue. Last year, because we got we got a lot of in-kind support from Google and support from Intel. We just kept the ticket price pretty, as low as we could do it to just break even essentially, for the additional costs that we did have to pay for. So, we unfortunately we don't have any way to change this ticket price because OCP.
And to be clear, this registration cost includes all 4 days of OCP.
Right. So I think we would ask to have the workshop be on Monday, the 13th all day, which is what they call day 0. And then folks would be able to continue to attending the workshop for Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday as well. And that includes all meals, snacks. I believe there's like a networking cocktail hour one evening of the week. So that 700, if you get the early bird, would cover that entire 4 days, including meals.
Will there be an option to just attend the workshop without the OCP? Because
You don't
No,
offer it.
it's all or nothing. So that's what I'm saying. That's kind of the downside to it, but it also, the benefit is it.
I mean, that explains the price difference,
Mhm.
for sure, but yeah.
Do we have information on how many people attended the workshop this past year? Do we remember roughly that number? Because you could also imagine using these 30 free passes to just defray the costs. Like if every
Yeah.
2 people pay for 1, for example, now suddenly the price is 350, 450. And we
So
might just be few enough that a scheme like that would even be feasible.
I remember when we did it 2 years ago at Intel, we had like exactly 100 people. This last year, I think we had a little bit less. I want to say it was closer to 80. Let me see if
Yeah,
I
I
can
think that's right.
report.
Okay. And that's the rough ballpark numbers are sort of close enough that, okay, that helps.
We had actually, just looking at this, looks like we had 63 people attend in 2024. So yeah, it's a little bit tougher. And then before that, I think we had kind of been combining it as part of ONF Connect for a couple of years, which again is kind of a combined event with a bunch of other projects, and it was again one ticket price for the whole event. So I mean, this is a good option. Intel and Google have volunteered venues potentially. If we wanted to hold it separately, that would require, again, a lot more work on behalf of the organizing committee. We'd have to bring in LF events again, probably, and like it'd have to pay out of pocket for more things. The trade-off would be we could offer a lower ticket price, but to be honest, it still would probably be around 300. So it sounds like looking at the comments, it sounds like the comments are really just like the travel, which won't really change whether it's a OCP or an independent venue. Does that sound about right?
I think, yeah, the plan is San Jose area regardless.
Mm-hmm. I guess going back to Nate's question is like, are people excited if we hold it with OCP, or is everyone kind of bleh? Like it's not that thrilling.
I haven't actually been before, but I certainly wouldn't mind finding out what it's like there.
That definitely seems like an interesting thing to try at least once, I would say. I also haven't been before, so I would love to see it.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea to try this and see if we can get some extra folks to maybe, come stop by and see if we can, make some connections that way.
Okay. So it sounds like next steps.
I have a question. Do we, probably it's separate, but like, would we get a booth in the exhibition hall? Would P4 be able to have some kind of presence on the days that we're not our workshop, or is that like something we'd have to do buy extra for?
We'd have to pursue that separately, Nate, but in the past, with ONF, we were able to get some complimentary booth space. So if we had a proposal to submit, I think they'd consider it.
Okay.
I think we can go back and try to negotiate some of this a little bit. You know, the registration fee is not negotiable, but we could potentially try to get maybe some more passes or a booth space or, you know, something like that and see what they say. Doesn't hurt to ask.
Yeah, or maybe Jonathan's idea, maybe we could somehow smear our, all-in passes as instead, 30% discounts or 50% discounts or something for a larger number of passes, and then we could offer those to people who are in the community. But of course, we don't want to create some kind of weird arbitrage where, or if you sign up on the P4 thing, you get $500, like, and then the whole conference goes that way. So,
Yeah.
but we may be able to do things. I mean,
Done that in the past, I think, right, Denise? Didn't we get a code for ONF members?
yeah.
We
Get
did.
like
We got a
20%
special
off or
code.
something? Yeah.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, it doesn't hurt to ask, for sure.
So
Okay.
it sounds like cautiously optimistic that we should recommend this to the governance board as the choice for 2025 to shoot for. That's what I'm hearing from multiple folks here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds like we go for it.
Okay.
All right. I will move on to P4 Developer Days is an I had every 2-week meetings for a while. Occasionally, we would just shoot the breeze if we didn't have a speaker, but occasionally we had a speaker that we recorded and published on I think all those recordings are now published on the P4 YouTube channel. I actually reminded Denise, I think I offered to email the education workgroup co-chairs and ask them if they'd be willing to solicit ideas for talks, but I haven't done that yet, but I can do that. And then, but in general, yes, if you or somebody would like to give a talk, to the group, you get to choose whether it's recorded later or not, recorded and published later or not, at your choice. But it'd be nice if you'd be willing to. Just let Denise or I know, and I will contact the education work group co-chairs, see if they're interested in trying to solicit ideas for these things as well. There's a lot more words here that I'm not going to read. I believe it was January 15th was when this repository, Open P4 Studio, was made public. Fabian, Ruffy, Vladimir Gurevich, and I have been the main people making comments and pull requests and testing it and basically getting larger and larger subsets of it, building and running tests. And that's still ongoing work. Thanks especially to Fabian for his, I don't know how you know so many different build tools all at once. Amazing. So check out that repository if you are interested. The top level README, one of the things we edited very early on was to explain what's included and what's not. Vladimir will be very happy to tell you exactly what it's missing. If you have a real Tofino board that you've bought that you still need to go to Intel, unfortunately, to be able to boot up software and run it on a physical Tofino board. However, what's in the repository now is enough if you just want to have a x86 64 processor server running one of the supported version of Ubuntu Linux and run the Tofino simulation model and control plane software and run packets, simulated packets through it. It's fine for that. It does work for that, for both P414 and P416, Tofino 1 and 2. And I believe it should fairly closely correspond to one of the most recent releases of the Intel official P4 Studio software. So check it out if you're interested, but realize its limitations. And oh, sorry, I should mention to the TST and a couple of others, we did collect a list of further requests from Intel to see if they would be willing to release additional items. For example, a board support package a reference board support package that would get us closer to being able to run this on boot this on a real board. There are proprietary drivers for SerDes that will be maybe more difficult, but that's something we're also asking. Also, training materials, other documentation. There's a long list of things. If you're curious, let me know. But I've sent an email to Deb Chatterjee at Intel asking from, signed by a list of several of us. I didn't assign it officially as, p4.org or the Linux Foundation. I just made it from us three individuals, but I haven't yet received a response after saying that to him about 1 to 2 weeks ago. But we'll definitely update that repository if such things are published.
So, Andy, can we like try to use the might of Linux Foundation to at least get some answer? I'm really surprised. Like, for example, when I wrote to Nick, he replied to me like the next day. And some of the stuff that is really necessary to happen is very, very simple. It just basically requires some statements from Intel, right? Like all the NDA stuff and such.
I don't
So,
know if I'm allowed to use the might of the Linux Foundation in these requests. Am I?
well, but like when we're here, right? Can we? That's why within that group, can we at least figure out the course of action? Because Deb
I can add as
ignore
many
your
individuals.
message, right?
I can add as many individuals to the list of requests as you want. To add the Linux Foundation or p4.org requires approval that I don't know how to get, but maybe Michelle or Nate know how I can get that approval.
Exactly.
Is there a way I can sign that p4.org or the Linux Foundation in a request, such a request? And I don't know if that would make a difference, honestly. I mean, but we can try. Yeah.
I think you'd have to have the board approve adding p4.org to the letter.
The governance board.
Yeah.
And the recipient is one of the members of the governance board. So if he approves it, then he should be willing to answer it too. Hopefully.
You can add this to the agenda of the board meeting, the next board meeting, and see if Deb has additional insight or has gotten anywhere. I know he has been checking internally.
Yeah. So I fully suspect the lack of a response is not necessarily the lack of any action whatsoever. It's the lack of actionable stuff that they can respond to. But yeah, I understand the frustration. Realized the frustration at Deb's side might be just as high inside of Intel. Okay. So we can follow up with that later. This will be an ongoing thing that I plan to at least mention a little bit in each meeting until we for a while at least. All right. It looks like we might actually have a few minutes. I guess before we talk about the software licenses, are there any other topics that weren't on the agenda that folks would like to mention or maybe add to the agenda for today's or future meetings? Okay, then I will jump into this. So some background here. Last November, maybe even a little earlier, but last November we received a report from a software license specialist hired by the Linux Foundation to do a preliminary audit of software licenses in the published P4Lang repositories. They found, for example, several dozen files that still had Intel proprietary and confidential notices on them, or barefoot confidential and proprietary notices on them. They found a lot of files where it wasn't obvious what the license was. And of course, they found a lot of files with Apache 2.0 explicit license notices in them as well. And so their recommendation was, remove, if possible, either remove the source files or change the proprietary notices to some other license. And a recommendation for adding a special one-line comment in source files, SPDX license identifier, Apache 2.0, or whatever string represents the true license on that file in each source file as a way to their automated software licensing tracking tools that can easily extract that information out. The nice thing is it's a one-line comment and the syntax of every character is very strictly prescribed. And there's no need for a tool, for example, to parse the entire boilerplate of an Apache license header and see if it matches or not. It just there's a long list of licenses that have very strict syntax for describing each one. So I've started adding SPX license identifier Apache 2.0 to a bunch of source files where it already had an Apache license on it. So it's very obvious that that's the file it's licensed under. I have gone to about the 5 repositories that had proprietary and confidential notices, and I've gotten PRs that replace them with Apache and gotten them approved by the people that originally committed those files or somebody that worked at the same company. So that those have all the proprietary and confidential ones are gone now. They've been all replaced with Apache 2.0. There weren't too many. The main sticking point now, or point of discussion, I think, is the vast majority, 95 to 99% of the source files in our repositories, I think we can put Apache 2 license on, no problem. There's 15 files out of about 3,000 in the P4C repo that I believe are exceptions to that. And they're described in this pull request in the original comment, which I'll flash up here briefly, but we won't have to dig into it now. But basically in this original comment, I've been updating this recently. I describe which 15 files I think should have a GPL version 2 license or a dual license GPL v2 or Apache 2, and give the reasons why. It's basically because they're a Python source file that imports a library called Scapy, which is GPL v2, or because it's something used in eBPF, included in eBPF source file from the P4C eBPF output, not the compiler itself, but the output of the compiler is eBPF code that's compiled, loaded in the Linux kernel. And the squeaky cleanest thing there is that such source code should have a GPL v2 on it. So this is 15 source files out of about 3,000 in the P4C repo. None of them are included in any P4C executable. I'll repeat that. None of those 15 files are included in any P4C executable. They're test files, or they're the output of the P4C eBPF or P4TC backend. It affects no other the output of no other backends has anything to do with this, only those two. So I've got some documents here that explain the rationale for these 15 files being a different license and why everything's Apache 2 except for that should be the default choice, and what these license identifier headers look like. And I'm working on a little Python program that we can have a pre-commit check in the future that every time you add new files, it should warn you and give you an error if you forgot to add the comment. So just a quick background on this, David Scano and I are working on this. If there's any discussion, please add it on this, or we have a few minutes, if you have any big comments you'd like to follow up on now. But that's where we are in the status of this. Fabian, I knew I probably scared you when I originally proposed this because I didn't lay it out like this, that there's only 15 files affected in P4C, and I haven't, except for the tutorials repo, I haven't found any of the repos that have this Scapy use. It's just those two, and it's only a handful of files.
Yeah, I think that's fine. I think the original description was much broader, but it's now narrowed down specifically to the test files and committing to the test files and these kinds of things.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry if it was a little scary at first.
Yeah, I think we can even, we can possibly add CI checks eventually if we clean up our code well enough that we can make sure that everyone checks their licenses before committing.
Yep. In fact, I think there's already a few repositories that are ready for that pre-commit check right now that we could test it on before we do it on the bigger ones.
For example, for the studio, so that will be very difficult, but
it turns out that I was just doing this. I was adding these comments for the P4 constraints repo, and I found out from Stefan that there's a Google open source project that you can run to add a copyright
automatically
to a source file with the Apache boilerplate, with the SPDX license identifier, with the copyright year and the name of the copyright holder as a command line option. You give the copyright holder if it's not there.
So I feel like that license header might be good enough without the boilerplate, because that is just noise often, I guess.
The add license has an option to include or remove, not include the boilerplate.
Yeah, and then that tool can also in CI check whether that is missing or not. So for example, when you'd make a PR, we could be able to run a check that.
Yep.
Make sure. Okay.
Yeah,
that's
no,
great.
My goal is that this is a pre-commit CI check eventually later this year, sometime when it's ready.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, if the tool doesn't support it natively, you could just run it and check if there's a diff, basically.
Oh,
Yeah,
I
okay.
okay. The tool that I've been writing like has all kinds of configuration options for like which file name suffixes to ignore to distinguish between which are source files versus which are documentation or make files and things like that, which I've been tweaking. And maybe I didn't find something already open source. There probably was, but I also have something that you can configure it to give for these 15 files. You can override it and say the default license you should check for is Apache 2, but for these named files, check for this license instead, which will be useful for the P4C repo going forward.
But fundamentally, do we need to start removing all the tests, all the PTF tests from the repos, or what?
I don't think so. I think they should stay.
So what's the official word? I mean,
The official
are we
word, I think,
okay
is
or we're not?
the top level license will say it's Apache. Most files are Apache 2, and a small number of test files are GPL v2, and have that in the top level license file in P4C.
So the test code will be changed to GPLv2.
Not all the test code, only the ones that import Scapy.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, with eBPF, it's unavoidable. With Scapy, this could be fixed in an afternoon if someone sits down and just pulls in another library and does a bunch of compatibility fixes. And then we don't have that headache anymore. But yeah, currently anything that imports Scapy is gonna be GPL.
So essentially
Yeah.
every PTF test, because if they don't if they do not import Scapy directly, they import the
Yes.
PTF details, which
We
import
might get
Scapy.
we might get an exception on that because the public PTF library already tries to make it optional to import Scapy, which is what Intel did 3 years ago.
Okay, so I hate to break it in. Can we defer the rest of this conversation to the next meeting? Because we gotta set time aside for the executive session.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Feel free to jump in on this with comments and questions. And yeah, sorry for running over.
all
Thanks,
good. I'll make sure we have time to get through everything we need to get through. So thanks everyone for joining. We'll just have the TST members. Denise and I can stay on. Or Denise, you don't have to stay on. I can send you the results if you want, but and we'll see everybody else at the next public meeting.
Yep, early March, I think.
See you. Bye.
Yep, bye.
Thank you, bye.